Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about Nxivm, and I can't believe I haven't heard about this story, so let me know if you guys have heard about this. I literally just learned about this today and I was like, I have to make a video on this. This is wild and there's so many people involved. It's crazy because it focuses on this MLM group that reminds me so much of Scientology. That's what I'm going to talk about today. So if you guys like these type of videos, don't forget to subscribe, like, and let's get to it. So if you haven't heard of Nxivm, they sold personal group seminars. It was basically a pyramid scheme. You know, the more people you recruited, the more money you made, and you know, you could level up. And the founder was Keith Raniere, and he was actually in the Guinness Book of World Records for having one of the highest IQs, said to be around 240 or something crazy, but clearly he wasn't that intelligent because he decided to make some really stupid decisions and he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail, which is perfect. When this guy was 24 years old in 1984, he decided to sleep with a 15-year-old girl. He told the sister of the girl that her soul was older than her biological age. So he definitely took advantage of this young girl, and sadly she ended her own life later on. So before he started Nxivm, he ended up starting 2 other MLM businesses that ended up failing. And then he started his 3rd MLM, and that was called Executive Success Program. And then he ended up rebranding it to call it Nxivm. He started this with Nancy Salzman, who at the time was a psychiatric nurse. Keep that in mind, okay? Because makes you wonder, like, these 2 people get together and they do some horrible, disturbing things. It makes you wonder, how do psychopaths find each other? Is there like a Craigslist for it? I don't really understand how that happens. So I'm going to start getting into Nxivm, and this is why it reminds me so much of Scientology. There's these 12 commandments, and one of the commandments is that when you enter, you are required to pledge that you will control as much of the wealth and resources of the world as possible. He also wanted to be referred to as perfect or as vanguard, which is very narcissistic and weird. Now, what Nxivm would do is they would try to have celebrities at their meetings to make it be perceived as if these celebrities were part of this organization. People at these meetings have said that they've talked to and seen Jennifer Aniston, Gerard Butler, Rosario Dawson at these meetings, and so they would think, oh, well, they're part of it and they're so successful, I have to be successful. It's definitely a big manipulation, part of the big scheme. The most notable celebrity that was part of this organization, who ended up being pretty much a leader in it, she was one of the senior members, was Allison Mack. She was from Smallville. Ended up pleading guilty to racketeering charges, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But there were a lot of highly prominent business entrepreneurs, people from political parties, Hollywood, celebrities, elites, that were part of this organization, which, are you even surprised? I feel like I'm not anymore. And again, not all of these people were directly involved, but they were used as a way to make it seem legit. They would lie and tell these new recruits that they were active members. Here's where it gets very manipulative and deceiving. They would recruit these women and talk about empowering women and mentoring them and how to succeed, and basically what they would do is that's how they would lure them in, and it would end up turning into sex slavery. As for Allison Mack, the way they recruited her in, she was younger and she was just starting to become more of a celebrity. And when they found her, they basically conned her into believing that they would raise her celebrity status and they would make her a great actress, and that it would be like this lifelong mentorship, just a bunch of phony lies. And then at first they would target sororities with a lot of young women, and they would use Mac as their front because, you know, they would look up to her. It was exciting. She was a celebrity. They thought they could end up like her. They would use her to gain trust from these sorority girls that were all young and easily able to be manipulated. And it said that Keith Raniere, he would prey upon these girls' insecurities, and he would really use that to his advantage, and he would make them feel safe even though they absolutely weren't. But then what he would also do is make it seem as though they wouldn't be able to be anything without him, which happens all the time, especially with these men in power. They think they just have complete control over these women, and it's so sad. It reminds me so much of Scientology again. Things that they would do to these recruits is they would wake them up in the middle of the night for a readiness drill. And if they didn't wake up in the middle of the night, they would be paddled by their masters. It was said that they could only have sex with Keith to be able to reach enlightenment, to gain their spiritual reward. Said too that they had to buy BDSM toys for the dungeon that they were actually building in the basement of the headquarters, which included cages, vibrating paddles, puppy plugs. I don't even know what a puppy plug is. I don't even want to know what a puppy plug is. That's really bizarre. Some of these recruits would have to pay $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 to be a part of this. And with that, they got a 12-hour grueling class that were basically religious ideologies, hypnosis classes, or they could take more classes under the Nxivm umbrella, which was workshops for actors, and it was hosted largely by Allison Mack. This part of it was mostly the female members. It's sad too though, because they would preach the women empowerment and things like that in these classes, but they were just doing the exact opposite to these women. It was definitely a form of brainwashing them. Members say that they were blackmailed to keep the Nxivm secret. After these recruits became a member, Mac ended up telling these women that they had to follow by obedience and that she was the master. Edmondson was one of the first people who came forward, and she said that they would make her write confessions and take nude photos of herself to give to the psychiatric nurse that started this with Keith, to give to her and to her daughter to keep as things to be blackmailed with in case she ever tried to leave, or that she would have fear of any repercussions. When you joined too, you were only allowed to eat 800 calories a day or there would be consequences. And the reason for this, they say, is because he wanted to break these women down so it was way easier to control them. So it was harder for them to see how wrong it was, everything that was going on. Now, they would brand these women, and what they would do, it was almost kind of like a tattoo. Allison Mack said that they shouldn't do tattoos because it wasn't intense enough. So what they would do is they would take like this laser, and they said it was a Latin symbol, but it was actually Keith's initials on the victims, and they said it was worse and more intense than childbirth. They did it without any numbing, anything. Now, Claire Brofman, she is an heiress to Seagram's, the alcoholic drink. She was a horse jumper, and her sister Sarah had started taking classes and kind of recruited her, and she ended up giving them $150 million. And she eventually started paying them to be her personal coaches, even though Keith had nothing to do with being an equestrian or ever riding horses or anything like that. But he started to have him train her, and he wanted her to make the Olympics because he wanted the notoriety and he wanted the fame and all that. Crazy though, she ended up making the Olympic team, but she never went on to be able to compete, and then she ended up quitting. Her dad ended up not feeling so great about this organization that she was in, and he started questioning it, and he ended up talking to Vanity Fair, and in it he said that it was and I can't say the word because YouTube, but he talks about how he never got to see his daughter, the emotional tolls, and how much money financially they had put into this, and he just didn't feel right about it. Well, that really made Claire and Keith mad. So they tried to sue him, and it was just a whole mess, and they tried to also sue other people who were critics of the organization. Then finally, the New York Times ended up catching wind of this and how it wasn't so legit as it seemed, and they were starting to put together articles, whereas the problem was they didn't have enough people because so many people were so scared of coming forward. Luckily, Mark Vincente and Sarah Edmondson ended up coming forward, which I'm sure was absolutely terrifying. They ended up going on record about everything that went on behind the scenes, and so they ended up publishing that story, which of course finally the police decided decided to investigate. In 2018, Keith was finally arrested. Of course, he said everything was consensual. The prosecutor said when they got him, he had over 50 female slaves. Nancy and Lauren Salzman ended up pleading guilty to the charges. They got about 6.5 years, which I don't think is enough time personally. Keith was sentenced to 120 years, but get this, he still had a flock of ride or die hardcore people that believed in his innocence. It's said that they would dance outside of his jail, like in honor of him, and they would stage protest at the prosecutors' houses and things like that. Super weird. Allison Mack faces up to 15 years in jail, but because of everything with the pandemic, it's been postponed, so we'll see what ends up happening with that. She did say, though, there's evidence that certain things happened, how they happened, why they happened, and how certain people chose them. That's a whole other conversation. So it makes me wonder if she realizes what she did, how she hurt people, or if she kind of realizes it, but still thinks like, they chose to. Like maybe she thinks it was consensual, but it's not consensual if you brainwash somebody and manipulated them and used them and lied to them. But I feel like maybe she was so under Keith's spell that it's hard for her to, you know, wake up and see through that as well. I have no idea, but hopefully they'll put her where she belongs pretty soon. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this, and if you've heard about this case. It's crazy. Apparently there's 2 seasons on HBO called The Vow. I haven't watched it, but I need to. Clearly I've been living under a rock. So I hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.